Hello, Sergei.
Hello.
Welcome back to Hong Kong.
Thank you.
And so we are happy to have you back. So last time you came here, it was 2019.
It has been already 2 years.
Yes, and this time is even more special or challenging because you are now going through the quarantine of 21 days. So how is everything so far?
So far, I feel fine. Thank you for arranging this wonderful hotel. I have a great view from my window, the sea, and also I can see the hills from the other side, on the other side, and I feel totally fine.
It's good to know. Yeah, it's almost like 2 weeks now. And our audience also know that you have arrived in Hong Kong, and they're also very amazed that you come all the way through the quarantine and perform for us in the concerts in late April and also early May. And they also have some burning questions for you. We have received quite a number of questions from trumpeters and music lovers, and they would really want you to answer them, share with them your insights on music, on trumpet playing, and also about yourself. But before you're answering these questions, I understand that many trumpeters are also very interested in your performance of Arban's Carnival of Venice. And it's good that you are going to play that in our concert very soon, and they would like you to share a little bit about the music and also maybe the techniques used in this piece. So can you tell us a little bit more about this work?
Yes, this is probably the most famous piece by Jean-Baptiste Arban, who was the French cornetist. And he wrote many variations, many virtuoso pieces, and variations on different famous themes, and including this one. And many composers have written variations on this famous song, tam 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 tam. So yeah, including Paganini and other composers. And well, for us, is one of the most famous pieces. And I can share how I practice this piece and what I focus on. So the basic of my practicing is playing in slow and middle tempo, below concert tempo, so that I can really control every note. And I play usually quite softly. Now I have one additional reason not to play loud because of my neighbors. So I have to be careful since I still have to stay here for quite a long time. So I can go variation by variation. Just, oops, sorry, that was my mouthpiece banging against the table. So the theme I'm not going to play. I'll start directly from variation number 1. So here it's important to have those legato intervals clean. So now I'll try again. And well, basically, like at any time during practicing, one has to play it till you feel that it's proper, that it's clean, and that you are satisfied. If you're not satisfied with your playing, well, work on it till it gets better. Otherwise, no point repeating over and over if it doesn't get better. Next variation. So here, again, check all the attacks, all the intervals, that it has to stay centered. So next one. here, make sure that your repetitions are clear enough, that your K sound is as close as the T sound, as close as possible. There should be as less as possible difference between your T's and your K's. The next one. I'm repeating in order to feel more centered. I wasn't satisfied the first time. The next one. Oh, same thing, basically. One has to pay attention to the lower tones in this particular one. So the next one is the triple tongue place. So one shouldn't forget about the dynamic. Now I'm kind of, most of the time I play softly. Sorry, something happens to my voice after I play. I don't know why. And one has to imagine where the music line goes. Well, in this piece is quite primitive, but still one should not stay boring. That's important. So the next one. So here there is this little jump in the middle. Ta, 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 ta. So in order to have it more successful every time you play, one has to anticipate these intervals. So like in every other place where you have a big leap, one has to aim in your mind with your ears in advance. So think one step ahead always when you play. Well, the next one has the theme and the rest of the notes. And the next one, again, keep the dynamic waves up and down, and make sure that your lower tones are as good as your middle ones. Again, pay attention to your K sound here. Then there is the slow variation, which I'm not going to play right now since we are talking technical details. And and we go to the next one. So every time you repeat a note, it has to be clear enough. So one has to articulate very precisely. Like. Because even in the concert hall with a very big echo, one has to hear all the repetitions. Otherwise, what's the point to repeat the note if you can't hear the repetition? Here, pay attention that your fingers do the right work. So very even work of your fingers, and it has to be perfectly synchronized with your what your embouchure and your tongue does. So the last variation, which is quite a tricky one, it can be tricky. Here, what is important is to be one step ahead. One has to think in advance of your big intervals. So there is the low theme, which has to be very solid and convincing. And then there is the rest. So play more with your ears. So. And there are several ways how to practice it. Well, then there is the ending, which I'll play now, and then I will explain about how to practice it. So, how to practice? First of all, one has to be efficient in how you spend your air, because the lines are quite long. And for that, in order to be the most efficient, one has to be centered. When we play in the center of each note, we spend less effort to produce a tone and less air. Again, we have to train our embouchure, and we have to be careful with our ears. We need to train our embouchure where each note is. We have to train our muscle memory, like with any other instruments. I mean, why do pianists or string players practice? They train their muscle memory. Now I'm discussing purely technical aspect. So the tricky thing, those jumps between the theme and the rest. So first thing, to get the theme proper. So one has to play just that, and there is more than enough time to aim for each note. It has to be really centered, each one. Now let's complicate things a little, because there is this jump to the upper part. So we have to train that. So you practice like this. Then there is maybe a little bit more difficult task, the jump back to the low, from the upper to the low range. So eventually you can try a little faster. Then what you could do is to practice this variation with the exaggeration of the length of the theme. So it will sound something like that. And so on. And then once you feel comfortable doing all that, you can try again to play normally and eventually increase the speed. That's how you work on it. This was a very short introduction to how I practice Carnival Venice.
Okay, that's great. I hope our trumpeters will all start practicing hard and and learn all the techniques you just shared. So as we have also received many questions for you, would you like to answer them now?
Yes, of course, but I would like to go back to Carnival Venice and to practicing. It's not about practicing hard. It's about being efficient in the practicing. And one shouldn't compromise with the quality. If it's clear that something is not good, it has to be improved. One shouldn't close the eyes if you see some dirt.
Yeah.
I like to, I often talk about it during master classes, and this comparison somehow seems to work. If you come to some restaurant and you are served on a dirty plate, it's not pleasant.
Mm.
So the same about music.
Yeah.
And
That's
there I'm talking purely about practicing. Of course, everyone is a human being, and mistakes will happen during performances. But this is why it's so precious, a live performance, because it's a direct contact with the musician, not just a recording. So
and the contact with the
there
audience
on
too.
stage, you will see the result of your homework. So therefore, when you play at home, you should not compromise. So now I'm done about
Yeah,
this.
just go for the excellence and use your ears, as you said.
All the time.
Yeah. So shall we do the questions and answers now?
So I have to switch to another window where I have the questions. Can you still see me?
Yes.
Good. So, question number one, what is the most common problem that trumpet students have nowadays? I think the most common problem, if to say about one, I think that they lack patience. They want the results immediately. They want to skip important steps. They rush to playing fast. And there I like to say that one has to learn how to walk before you try to run, otherwise you fall. So one step at a time, and the patience will reward. That's very important. Yes, I would include one more thing, which is I should not skip that thing. One should not focus only on the technical aspect. After all, we play for the sake of music. Without music, no point to play. So, question number two. What is the most important physical aspect of trumpet playing? Is it endurance, articulation, or something else? Well, let me answer like this. The music is not born in the instrument or on the lips or embouchure or in the lungs. The sound. The sound, how I think, it's an image of sound that we have in our mind. It's what we imagine how we want to sound. That is important. And then with our skills, we want to project that image to the audience. There, our instrument is a barrier, because through this thing, we express ourselves. This is a tool which helps us to express ourselves and to make it louder. As you can see, there is a nice bell here. So, and in order to do that as close as possible to how we imagine, we need to master our instrument, and in such a way that it should stop being the barrier. So it should be a barrier as less as possible. So there, it depends on the day. All aspects of playing, endurance, articulation, I would simply call it control over the instrument. And for that, one has to spend hours and hours and hours of getting used to sing through this. So all those aspects mentioned, endurance, articulation, everything else is included in there. So to say which one in particular, well, all of it. Now, question number three, can you demonstrate and talk about circular breathing, probably double tonguing? Well, I will try on a single note. So. Something like that. I don't know if it was clear. The key to circular breathing double tonguing is not to have your K sound very dry. So I was talking about the opposite, to have it very clear. So now for circular breathing and double tonguing, your Ks have to be quite soft so that your throat is not completely covered and the air can still pass. That's how I approach it. Question number 4. Are there any books that you would recommend to all musicians? Well, I would not name any specific books, but I think it's important that musicians should read about the lives of, for example, other musicians that you enjoy listening to, or composers that you love. Lives of great composers. Why not? I think that's really important. And I don't know which composer in particular you like, so there is an infinite information out there. Otherwise, reading in general is important, obviously. Question number 5. Can you talk about your early music training in Russia and later in France? The first 3 years, from 6 to 9, I practiced piano, and this was a great basis for my trumpet playing later on, because when I picked trumpet at the age of 9, I could already read the music, and all the trumpet texts that I was facing were really easy for me, because I could already read 2 lines and suddenly I had only 1. So this was a fact worth noting, I think. And I had lessons with different trumpet teachers, but still the person who taught me the most and with whom I've practiced together for a bigger part of my life is my father. And even to this day, when I come visit my parents in Israel, when I practice, he's there listening, and sometimes he gives me good advices even today. In France, I was at the conservatoire for 2 years. I was in the class of Guy Touron, famous trumpet player, who was himself a student of Maurice André. And I always enjoyed listening to Guy Touron's playing. He plays still today, and he has this so warm sound, which was always very inspiring to listen to. How do you feel? That's question number 6. How do you feel about staying in the same room for such a long quarantine period in Hong Kong? I must admit that maybe for me it's much easier than for most people. Somehow I think I needed this period for myself, being in self-isolation. I'm not complaining at all. I can practice, stay in touch with my friends and family. I even do online lessons. So I'm really fine. I'm okay. But I have to say that I'm really looking forward to finally get out.
Yeah, we are looking forward to it.
It's long enough. So number 7, do you feel any pressure when making music in order to stay at the top level of the trumpet world? Well, the last years, I must admit, I started to have these thoughts while performing. The reason is that every performance feels like a recording live on TV, because so many people, without permission, they film the concerts with their telephones, and that feels like some sort of additional responsibility in a way. Yeah, something like this. Question number 8. What do you like or not like about Hong Kong? I must say that I haven't seen enough probably, but what I do know from my last trip is, and this trip also, that I'm really thankful for the hospitality. And 2 years ago, I really enjoyed playing with Hong Kong Sinfonietta, and I met many wonderful people here. I haven't seen much of Hong Kong though, because simply there wasn't enough time, so maybe a little bit more this time. Looking forward. Number 9. How many hours of practice do you need every day in order to stay in a good shape? Probably 1.5 or 2 hours, something like this. Again, it's not about the quantity, it's about the efficiency. And since I only use about 15 minutes, not more, for warming up, then the rest of the time is working on my repertoire. Next question. In relation to the last question, how do you overcome your bad days, if there are any? One has to be careful. Very often one has to perform on stage when it's a bad day. When I think of it, how often did I feel that it's a perfect day when I'm on stage? Almost never. There's always a reason to complain, but I mean, complaining doesn't help really. So one has to be extra careful. I prefer to say better not to practice enough than too much, because if you've practiced too much, then afterwards you need to give extra rest to your lips, meaning that you're wasting time. So being careful is important. With your embouchure, we don't have a spare one, so what is the biggest technical difference between playing a flugelhorn and trumpet? Well, flugelhorn, and I will show you my flugelhorn now. Here it is. Has a very deep mouthpiece. I don't know if one can see, really deep. So I don't use flugelhorn as a trumpet replacement like many players do. And as you can see, it's a 4-piston instrument with a huge bell. So it's really built for low range. It needs more air. The placement of notes is at a different place. The resistance is different, the resistance of air. So my colleagues, wind players, would understand. And well, obviously the sound, it has a different voice.
So can we understand? Because I'm not playing the trumpet, I'm just
I can
curious.
play a few notes.
Yeah. So does it mean that you are really like two different sets of techniques, like you are playing a different instruments in some ways? Because you said the positions are different, and also like I'm sure things slightly different too.
Well, there is a lot of common in playing, but let's say for me, if to talk about the technical aspect of it, I imagine each note as a target at a shooting range. If you are at the center, then you sound the best. Yeah? Imagine that if you pick another instrument, all the targets change their location a little bit. And since we don't see the notes, we just feel them. Imagine that we shoot with eyes closed. We just need to remember the feeling where each note is. I mean, how can we see the note? We just feel the note, right? So after we get used to a certain instrument, we know, or rather we feel where the address of each note is. And then if you pick another one, then it shifts a little. So that's the difficulty.
So for example, if you're playing like a C major scale, so the targets will be different then
A
for
little.
instruments.
A little.
I see.
Just a little. Sometimes it's just specific notes that one has to be careful about. And with
So it's
experience,
similar but
one
different.
gets to know where exactly is different.
That's interesting.
How do you choose a suitable trumpet mouthpiece? It has to be a proper compromise between the ease of play and the sound. Sometimes it doesn't come together. So it's great if you can have both. But again, to suggest something in particular is difficult. One has to try. It's like trying the shoes. Because if a certain pair of shoes is comfortable for me, it's not necessarily comfortable for you. But again, feel how it goes, if it's really tiring to play a certain mouthpiece, and then listen with your ears. I don't think I said anything new, but I'm afraid I cannot add anything to what I've just said. Do you have any hobbies besides playing the trumpet? Movies. I'm a gamer also, I play games. But if I had to choose something in particular over all of this, of course, I would choose being with my friends. Because of my travels, and since my friends are at different countries, it's difficult to stay in touch. So it's not very often that I have opportunity really to meet with my friends. So for me, that is the most important. Friends and family. Which concert that you have given before would you think was the most memorable in your performing life, and why? One of those concerts was in Paris some years ago. I played with the St. Petersburg Philharmonic Orchestra with the maestro Yuri Temirkanov. And I've played, by the way, Tchaikovsky Rococo variations that I'll be performing here. Why? Well, playing that piece with maestro Temirkanov was really special. I think he's one of the best conductors for Tchaikovsky music. And it's a famous orchestra. And it was in Paris. So it kind of all came together at this particular moment for me. I must say this concert was recorded, so there is this recording. But it felt really special too. Question number 15. Who's one of the greatest trumpet players in the world? And do you still have targets that you would like to reach in your musical life? Well, music itself, it's infinite. And of course, I have still lots and lots to learn. And it's never enough. So I hope I will improve more and more with years, as long as I can. Question number 16. How did you master circular breathing? What is the key to this technique? The key is to try. If one doesn't try, it doesn't work. So the basic of circular breathing, it has been explained so many times on internet. One can really read about it, but well, since I'm here, you need to accumulate air in your cheeks, then do this. So you don't do anything, it's just the air from your cheeks. And then if you inhale, and then you do that without the aid of your arms, you can do just, but then you inhale at the same time. So, which means that the air is coming out and coming in at the same time. Then you can practice with a straw and a glass of water. Make sure that the bubbles don't stop. So this is how I started. The key is to switch between the air from your cheeks and your lungs. And one doesn't even need to accumulate a lot of air. One doesn't have to do like this. Just like that. And to produce contrary to the image, as many people have, one does not need a lot of air playing trumpet. That's it. If one is centered and efficient, there's the sound. At least that's how I approach it. Question number 17. What kind of music do you regularly play in your practice routine that you think is beneficial to trumpet players? Something I regularly play. Well, I work on my concert repertoire, which changes depending on my upcoming concert programs. So I don't think there is some piece. Actually, there is one. If I have a little bit of time in between my concerts, in order to make sure that I'm in shape, I play some technical difficulties from Introduction and Rondo Capriccioso that I recorded many years ago. And since it's a really tricky piece and those passages are really demanding, when I can play those well during my practice sessions, it basically means that most of the pieces I need to play in concert would work as well. So, and it's fun for me to practice those. So I don't play etudes. For me, instead of the etudes, I play excerpts from the pieces that are actually, can be performed. Not necessarily only that one piece, but other pieces too. I'm a little bit lost. Yes. Question number 18. Are there any specific exercises that you use when warming up, or do you make up your own? As I said earlier, I don't warm up for a long time, just 15 minutes. So I start a little bit with Herbert Clark exercises. Da 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 da. Everybody plays that. And I do not do buzzing. I don't say it's bad, but I never did it, and so I cannot judge whether it's good or not because I never did. So, but I can only share what I do. So I start with Clark, then I do a little bit of flexibilities from Pierre Thibault, and then I do a modified vocalise from Timofey Dokshitzer book, which goes from pedal tones till the upper range in different keys. And one has to, the tricky thing is that one has to find the, so to say, medicine that fits you in particular. What fits me would not necessarily fit you. That comes with experience. The most difficult is to know yourself. And each person has a different embouchure, a different physical everything. So get to know yourself. It will take the whole life. Now, next question. You often play arrangements of music composed for other instruments. Is that what you are enjoying the most at the moment? I played trumpet compositions as well, which are written for trumpet, but it's true that the core of my repertoire is the arranged pieces. The reason for that is that I simply like this music. And in order to play Mozart, one has to make an arrangement, but because unfortunately he hasn't written anything for us, for example, nor Schumann. So And therefore flugelhorn comes in very handy, because on trumpet it would not sound the same. Different voice, which is needed, I think. Next question. Have you ever done anything more challenging than playing the trumpet? No. Nothing comes to my mind, really. So question number 21. What is the first thing that you want to do after your 21-day quarantine? If possible, to breathe fresh air. But since I have to wear a mask outside, I don't know if I'll really feel it. But at least I want to be outside. And especially what really bothers me, I want to take this off.
Yeah, every artist says so.
Yes, it's especially I'm not used to wearing a watch. So yeah, well, at least it's not very tight. So yeah. Are there things that you do to enrich your life? Well, being a musician and being in touch with interesting people, seeing the world, reading, all that. Can you name 3 of your favorite movies? Why do you like them? I don't know about 3. I can think of 2 that come to my mind. One is a Korean film called Old Boy. It's a really crazy film, but I like it. And another one is a very popular French film, Amélie, that probably you've heard of. It's a romantic film. Yes, well, I could name another one, was The Matrix, by the way. So spontaneously, here you go. Mind opening, so to say. What do you do or practice in order to maintain your mental health? Well, I don't have any specific training, but again, probably playing music is quite beneficial. We went through that already. Or did I skip that question? I don't know.
So you can go to question number 25.
Yes. I think maybe I've repeated one question. Okay. If you could choose your instrument again, would you still go for trumpet? Yes, I would. But now I know which mistakes to avoid, because at the early stage there was some things that I've tried which didn't work, in terms of music and in terms of certain technical aspects. At some point I over practiced and I almost broke my embouchure. It was really dangerous.
So was there really like an issue about injury for trumpeters?
No, it didn't come to the injury really, but it came to the point of almost affecting my concert life. And I started to play concerts really early, so I really had to stay in shape.
Yeah, because I understand for pianists, for example, that if they practice too hard, then they hurt their fingers and it really directly affect all the performances. But for trumpeters, like I can't imagine. So what would happen when there's some problem?
I don't know if one could even see on the outside, but I simply over practiced and I overplayed high tones at some point. And I probably wasn't playing them correctly back then. let's say back then especially. So again, one has to be really careful. Do enough rests when you practice. This is my important advice. And the last question here, have you ever experienced stage fright? If yes, how did you overcome it? Yes, I have experienced and stage anxiety, and especially during the later years. And that is linked to the earlier question, if I feel any pressure when making music. I think it's about thinking too much of this, so to say, responsibility. There is a strong energy exchange between the stage and the audience, so which is obviously not happening during the practice sessions. So of course, I feel the most comfortable when I practice or when I rehearse. And when you start think too much about it, then kind of it takes away your concentration. At least this is how I feel. So when I'm on stage, that's to answer the second half of the question about overcoming it. One has to stay focused on the music, to be present at this very moment, and just to be focused on telling the story, your musical story, living it.
And then your attention will draw from yourself back to the music, and then you won't feel the anxiety anymore.
Well, the most important, after all, is the music itself and not yourself.
Yeah, but usually when you feel anxious, it's more like when you think about yourself, like whether so what's going on stage, and that's how the anxiety comes, I think.
Yeah, I think thinking too much about yourself while performing is something which does not help. This is how I would think. So focusing on the music is what helps.
All right, so thank you very much.
I hope it was all right. I hope I answered all the questions.
Yes.
And
I believe there are still many more coming because yeah, the Hong Kong audience are so excited that you are coming, and even before you come out of quarantine, they already think of many things to ask you. Maybe we can have another section later.
of course.
Meanwhile, so thank you very much again for sharing your thoughts on music, on playing the trumpet, and also about yourself. And we hope to see you very soon in person.
I'm
So
looking forward.
take care and keep in touch.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.